lectures by the International Hempology 101 Society and the University of Victoria Student Society Hempology Club. My name is Ted Smith, and I'm happy to be here again for 22 lectures this year. We do have some new guest speakers to teach some classes and some experienced people to come in. For example, in a few weeks, Bill Finley from Hemp & Company will be here. But it's an exciting year for me, in part because we have a new feature, a little darker in here. For the first time ever, I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation to complement what we're talking about in class. For those viewing online, whether live, which took a couple of extra minutes to get going, as it sometimes does, or later on YouTube, this, or even here in class, the pictures I'm about to show you are all on hempology.ca in our photo gallery. I've created a separate area that will have the different slideshows that we're using so that you can refer to them as we go. So, today's class, just to jump right in with things, is certainly one of my favorite topics. It's the ancient use of cannabis in various civilizations around the world. And here, yeah, we got some handouts there. Yeah, if you want to grab a couple more of those to pass around.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So just go ahead.
Yeah, those are the ones for the lecture here today. Hey guys. Yeah, today, yeah, come on in, gang. Yeah, don't worry about being late. It's a small class, but bring it on. Right on.
Lots of room, come on in.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Come on down this end, please.
I'm just going to pass around the handouts. If you already have one, obviously, just pass it on by, but I think a number of people maybe came in there that didn't get one. I'm not sure actually just did. But if you haven't got one of these on your way in, please grab one on the way out. There are the handouts with information about today's lecture on it. Okay, so 23 minutes to talk about the ancient world and the use of cannabis and hemp. Pretty much impossible to do. If you want to learn more, one of the best ways is obviously reading. My friend Chris Bennett here, who comes to pretty much every one of our conventions, which is why I showed his picture there, has written a couple books from which I get a lot of my information today. Green Gold, The Tree of Life, Marijuana and Magic and Religion is really about today's class, covers a lot of ancient stories and history of the cannabis plant, although he does go beyond what today's is into the past couple of thousand years. This book here, Sex, Drugs, Violence in the Bible, really focuses on the biblical use of cannabis, you could say, or the use of cannabis and possibly other drugs by the Christians and those like them before, and the history of prohibition as well. So these two books here really are the basis of a lot of my talk today, but certainly not all. Come on in, there's still more seats around. Look out.
Yeah, there's some more back here too.
So, I guess, as I said, it sort of all started in the beginning. In some ways, if you take yourself back, I would like to think, hundreds of thousands of years ago when we were still kind of what you would call hunter-gatherers. You could use whatever term you like, we could debate that for a while, but certainly we experimented for millions of years as animals to a point do to this day with various plants and mushrooms and roots and different things from our natural environment we would experiment with and eat them, and I often would sort of say that the fall from the Garden of Eden is actually a symbolic representation of the first mushroom trip that was taken where, we a few million years ago fell out of our former state of innocence and perceived God individually and collectively through the use of magic mushrooms. It's one of the things I debate with Chris about, because Chris has documented, and I think there's absolutely no doubt that the Tree of Life, and I'll talk a lot about that today, was a representation of the cannabis plant. In almost every ancient civilization we talk about, that is very much true, and I'm going to go over a number of them today. And the reason that it became known as the Tree of Life is for, I think, several different reasons. These aren't in the exact order. Like I say, these pictures are available online for people to see later. And I forget the exact date of this. I should have these things a bit more documented, but I'm lucky to be here. So, this is sort of one of the first pictures of the cannabis plant. And if you've seen other symbolic drawings of the Tree of Life, you might see similarities between this plant and if you imagine it being stylized, and I'll show different artistic representations of this from the Assyrians in particular are fascinating, that show examples of the Tree of Life. Now, part of the reason that it became known as the Tree of Life isn't simply because, and I shouldn't say simply, when it's eaten and when cooked properly can achieve very euphoric states of mind. And historically, when we were experimenting with these different plants and everything like that, our thinking was quite different, right? We didn't understand the natural world at all. We didn't know how to explain how things worked. And so we created gods or goddesses, as we call them now, different deities that we would use as explanations for why things worked and how they were created and why and who created them and such. And so the cannabis plant in particular was associated with a lot of different goddesses of fertility or gods of wisdom and power in various ways, because in ancient times people would consume these various plants, and they would consider these plants to be extensions of the god or goddess themselves. If you read Terence McKenna's book, The Food of the Gods, he talks a lot about, even to this day, if you study, peyote ceremonies and such, they consider, these plants to actually have, deities living within them. And by consuming these various, plant gods, as they were often referred to, or goddesses, as I prefer to call them, they would allow these different deities to enter into them and communicate with them. And so many different parables in history have been written about this experience, and it's somewhat confusing because whether they were using mushrooms or opiates or cannabis at times is difficult to determine because of the last couple thousand years of prohibition, where the Catholics and other Christians have gone and destroyed as much information about these various plants and their history as possible. And I think a good example is even, before this, I passed by were the Egyptians, right? This is Haset, I think her name is. And this goddess here, you can see, this is clearly a marijuana leaf on the top here. If you look at many of the different ceremonies that were attributed to this goddess, you will see not only incense burners, and there's several different styles of incense burners that you could learn to recognize in the Egyptian hieroglyphics. But also, and I didn't bring it this year, but the last 2 years I brought one of my pictures I have at home with a bunch of Egyptians with this little pile of what they call unguent on the top of their heads. If you look it up, they don't really explain what it is very well. And often, when you study some things that you assume are cannabis related, they have very vague explanations of what the real term might be, like the Tree of Life, right? Like, the Christians don't really know what the Tree of Life is. They'd like everybody to think it's symbolic of something and doesn't really represent, a real plant, which is completely not the case at all. And so the little pile on the top of their heads was actually mostly hashish, mixed in with a few other oils and perfumes that they would use sometimes in ceremonies to deal with the dead, but they did all sorts of